Hey, what's up, Liron here, and in this video we're gonna paint this small cute pigeon. Now, the things I wanted to focus on here are twofold. One is very simple values, meaning light and dark, as you've seen many times in my statue paintings and many other examples. And also, I want to simplify, not simplify, but rather put emphasis on temperature. Okay, so you'll see a lot of changes in temperature here. Cool, warm. I really wanted to put an emphasis on that, and I'm going to explain exactly why, and it has to do with my last two paintings. So with that, let's take it to the table and get started. So here's our drawing, and as always, I'm going to put down below in the description a link to this stage so you can see a higher quality picture of it if you want to recreate it, trace it however you want, and also for the reference photo. Now, I want to show you two interesting things, because what we're going to focus on here is temperature and simplification. Here's why. Look at this one, and you may remember this. I believe I posted this video already. If I switched the order, apologies. But what happened with this painting process is I feel like I've gone a little bit too overworked. So I want to focus on simplification here, which is why we're going to have basically two values, light and dark. So that's something I want to work on personally. And the way to simplify is already in the drawing stage, you make a decision to divide it into however many values you want, which brings us to this drawing result. Now let me show you another thing. You may remember this painting that I showed you as well, which I really enjoy doing. Now, something does stick out here to me personally, and it's this card. The temperature is a little different from the rest. Now, this is a matter of taste. Some may like this look. To me personally, I think if you look at this section, it's perfect. The harmony and temperature are perfect, but then this blue here, to me at least, sticks like a sore thumb. But if you look at this, for example, this is perfect. This is really, it's farther, it's merged with the trees here or whatever. This works. This kind of sticks out, so I want to remedy that as well, which is why not only we're going to focus on simplifying into two values, but we're also going to look at the temperature within these areas and try and get something that makes sense, also here and also in the background. Now let's zoom in a bit and get started. So here's the thing, when you look at this pigeon or dove, I can never tell the difference. There are a couple of very basic shapes. We've got fairly a warm color scheme, so we're going to aim for that. Not a lot of dominant blue here. We've got these shadows with lots of beautiful reflected light here on the wing. The background is a nice muted green. I really love this. This kind of green you would produce with a warm blue and warm yellow, as I'm going to show you in just a moment. But let's actually start with this section, because the shadow here is fairly muted. So I'm going to mix, and I'm going to use three colors for this one: French Ultramarine, Quinacridone Rose, or similar to that. Let's use this warm yellow that I got here with a combination of this one, which I forgot what it is. Let me actually check. This is supposed to be, I believe, Indian yellow. Yeah, so this is Indian yellow by White Knights. Now, it's not really Indian. It's a little cooler than most Indian yellows, but it will work in our context. So I'm just starting with graying it out and figuring out how I can get a neutral mix, okay? So I'm gonna take out my test paper here and just test it out and see. So we got something that's fairly muted. It's still a bit on the side of green. So I'm gonna add just a bit of red to it, and let's see what this gives us. So this is more like what I wanted. So I'm gonna apply this paint to here. And because we've simplified this greatly into just two values of light and dark, basically, or white to be more precise, and dark, it's going to make the process a whole lot simpler, okay? Now, when you're working in these kinds of simplified shapes, there is one thing you want to pay attention to, and that is the outline of the shape. This is where you get your chance to indicate the texture, okay? The borders of the shape. So if you want a feathery texture, that's where you can express that. You see? That's pretty much the only place you have to express that. So here we go. And we're done with that. Now we have something similar going on the right, and let me move the palette a bit. Only the difference is we have some reflected warm light there. So let me add a bit more of that yellow and also a bit more water just to lighten it up a bit. Maybe a bit of this red, rather. And let's see what we get here. This is meant to be a little lighter and reflect some of the environment. We're going to have a more dominant reflected light later on, but just to get us started up top. Now we go back to the more neutral mix, and this is going to be the shadow around the eye, okay? I'm just going to place that in here. And in fact, let's connect the eye while we're at it. I switched to a smaller brush, and let's create this strong orange here. I know I'm veering a bit from the color scheme I said I add a bit of Pyrrole Scarlet just for strength, but it's really not a must. And then let's just fill in this entire eye. So I'm gonna leave a bit of a highlight, just a bit of it, okay? Worst case, we can come back with some white paint and, you know, fill it back in, make it larger if we want. But this is a good starting point. Okay, now let's move on to some more interesting areas. So look at this beautiful shadow here. We actually have it start cool and then go into warmer reflected light. So let's start with the cool mix, which is going to be somewhere around here. It's cool to neutral. It's neutral pretty much. So let's see what we have here. And we're going to actually need a larger quantity and a bit of a bigger brush again. So here we go, a bit of all primary colors until I get a neutral. That's how I approach things. First I mix a neutral, and then I figure out where I want to push that neutral. So this is actually good, I don't want to push it anywhere. So let's get started and place in those wings. So you see I'm using a bit of I'm creating a bit of a shape or a texture for the edges to really express that these are feathers. And I'm actually gonna use this opportunity to mix it, to merge it with this area next to the wing, okay? Because this is all in the shadow. Keep those edges fresh. And if you want the orange or warm to start here, go a little beyond that so there's room for movement, okay? That's really important. So this area is a little cooler. I'm basically filling in all areas that are a little cooler, okay? And then, as quickly as I can, before this starts to dry, I'm going to switch to the warmer mix of my red and yellow. It's still a bit neutral, which is good, actually. And you see how immediately there's this beautiful sense of temperature here. Now let's move this all the way towards here. We'll actually have some wet and wets to do too in just a moment. But let's first just make sure we get this transition right. And you can give the paper a bit of an angle if you wanted the paint to move downwards. I think this is going to be, I'm going to hold it a bit because I don't want it to be permanent. Now, here's the beautiful part. Let's fill in the tail. This actually connects to a shadow on the side of the leg, like so. Let's fill in the legs already while we're at it. And I'm going to use this spray gun just to keep things wet for a little longer. And because you'll see why we're going to need it in just a moment. Some shadows on the fingertips or the fingers. Now here we go. Let's add or inject a bit of wet and wet with a bit of a darker color here. So we got a bit of a shadow under the wing, so that's important. We've got a bit of darkness here next to the edge of the tail. Still has a bit of warmth in it actually. A bit more red, a bit more blue. Just keeping that warmth going. And we'll start just bringing in the different shapes of light and shadow we see wet and wet, okay? There's this pattern of feathers here. This painting will essentially almost be done after these stages. This is what's beautiful about simplifying a scene or an animal or a subject like that, because you can get everything done in pretty much one go. Now here, we have a bit of a cooler shadow on the wing, so let me mix a bit of a cooler thing here, still pretty neutral, and have that in. Now you can accentuate and exaggerate this sense of temperature by using pure blue here. You don't have to go gray to orange, you can push it further and have it like really shine. I just want to stay somewhat loyal to the source here, so I don't go too crazy on the temperature differences. And this will all make a little more sense once we add the background, as you'll soon see, and you can probably guess. This is actually in the shadow, my bad. But yeah, once we'll add the background, you'll see how, and you can probably guess already. It's just going to make the dove or pigeon pop a little more. Okay, so this is basically all you need. Now, if you carefully observe this area, there is obviously a bit of a difference in values there, but we are not obliged in any way to pay any attention to that. Now let me bring a bit of an angle here, because now I do want the angle to be permanent. I'll actually need it to be permanent in order for the paint to properly flow top to bottom. And let me show you a really cool trick for the background here. So we want a neutral green. A neutral green will be able to produce much better with a French ultramarine, kind of a warm blue, and the yellow like the one I actually have here on the right, which is more of a warm yellow than this cooler one. This looks similar to Nickel Azo yellow. This is more like New Gamboge, Indian yellow, and so on. So this will actually be a little more beneficial to our use. Now here's a cool trick for you. Keep it interesting. Let's separate the colors here. The pigeon is relatively neutral, so with the background we can go a little less neutral. So here's what I mean. Put a bit of blue, and then put a bit of yellow. See how that works? Then continue with this yellow maybe, and then go back to a bit of blue. Now think about this. If we can contrast this warm color with a blue, it's going to look interesting. So let's put the blue next to the orange, you see here? And that's going to make it interesting and create a differentiation between the pigeon and its background. Now it does need to be a little darker, so let's go like this. Now let's add a bit of red just to neutralize things, okay? So that it's not too green, okay? You want to avoid that. And this will really make a difference for the areas that are white. Notice how when I put these darker values next to what's white, and I do need to darken this a bit. Let's go for a bit of pre-mixed darker green here. And you will see how when you, again, layer it next to a white color, or paper white, it's really making the pigeon pop, okay? So let's go like this, like that. Now here, let's go for like both yellow and green, wherever I feel like it. And in this instance, the the value isn't as important because the separation here is really made with the temperature. So like we can really play this to our benefit here and have the temperature create the differentiation rather than having to worry too much about value, because remember, we simplify the values into just light and dark. So there is no reason to all of a sudden start looking at the more nuanced aspects of it, because we already simplified it. Okay, so make the decisions ahead of time, and these will determine how challenging your painting process is. But once you made your decision, you don't always have to, but it's a good idea to stick to it and try and work on that thing you decided to work on. And then later on you can have another attempt and try working on something a little different. Now what I love about these paintings is that, again, you don't have to be a master really of anything. We're just filling in the areas, and it's a relatively simple value scheme. Again, just light and dark. In fact, I'm going to push the darkness here a bit because I want this leg to pop a little more. But you get my point. You don't have to really be good at matching values to get this to look good. And this is the plus of this exercise, because with the previous bird I showed you, I have indeed gone a little overboard with the details. They got a little messy. It felt to me a bit overworked, and I just didn't enjoy it as much. So I wanted to produce something a little simpler for you here, and to show you how the decisions beforehand can really dictate the result. With the previous one, I didn't even make a real decision when I got started. My only goal was let's paint very loosely and messily and accept the result. And this is pretty much what I got. So here my goal was, let's keep it to 2 values and focus on the temperature. The drawing is simple, the values are simple, which allows us the mental energy, if you will, to focus just on the values. Now we have a rock here, it's fairly dark. Let's mix that and kind of let it blend to the background while this edge is still wet. So here we go, like so. And the right side of the rock is going to be pretty much white. I'm going to add a bit of a shadow under the feet here, the small pigeony feet. So here we go. And I hope this example really shows you how, just by making the right decisions ahead of time, you can very often make the process a little easier and simpler on yourself, which can be really beneficial. One more thing, let's push the darkness here a bit more. I feel like there isn't enough separation with between the leg and tail, so let's go for that. Even if it blends a bit with the rock, I'm fine with that. So just to make the separation a little clearer. Here we go. Now, two small touches that I did forget is just adding the darkness to the eye, which I'm gonna do right now. Actually gonna use a bit of black, it's so dark there anyway. So here we go, just a bit of this black dot here. There is a bit of detail here on the beak, fairly dark. So that's not gonna overwork a thing because it's very focused. And we do have this dark shadow running across here. Now this is a trap. You can start putting in smaller shadows that you see here and there. Try not to fall into this trap. I'm just gonna do a few that feel like would be beneficial to the definition of the different shapes here. Here's the feathery texture or shape. And I think we're done with that. So I'm gonna sign it, remove the tape. So here we go, final result. And with these paintings, I find that removing the tape is really significant because you get to see the clean borders, truly clean. And before that, it was just probably a big mess. Now, one thing I do wanna emphasize that you can do to go beyond that and improve this one greatly is, if you can and if you have enough control, that's something I'm still learning and improving, merging the pigeon's wash with the background. So if you can actually spill out in the very first layers, just watch the shape that you want to leave and paint around that, but go with one wash. Put in this neutral, then put in this orange, and immediately put the blue next to it and open it up. What will happen is you'll get fewer of these unclean edges. If you can do that, that's ideal. That's, I think, the epitome of achievement. It's something I'm working towards. It's going to be interesting now that I'm familiar with this scene to give this a try, to maybe try working this technique, because these are too large of areas to actually, I wouldn't put masking tape or masking fluid on such big areas. I see some people put on the edges and then remember to work around them. That's a possibility as well. But I would honestly love the ability to look at the reference and really recognize this area automatically and work around it. So just a small thing that you can do to improve and go beyond this result, for example. Now with that, let's wrap it up. So this is it. I really hope you enjoyed this one. Once again, I want to thank you for watching. And you get to see how from one video to another, I'm also working on improving things and finding the tricks, so to speak, to improve my art. Many times, as you've seen now, it's a matter of choice before you even get to the actual painting process. A decision you make when you get started actually influences the painting significantly, and you can make the process much easier or much harder, much more detailed or much simpler based on decisions you make beforehand and have that mental clarity. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget again to drop a like and a comment and subscribe if you still haven't. I have tons of videos like this one. If you want to learn how to paint like me, let go, enjoy the process. Be sure to check out my frustration-free watercolor course in the description box below, and I will talk to you again real soon.